Okay, so we know how to make the input cable, right? This is what you end up with an input cable. It's the link cable on one end, nice little 1/8 inch jack to plug into either your synthesizers like the Korgs series or the pocket operators, which I like to use. But how did you get it to also connect to the Game Boy? And that's what we're going to talk about now, because you effectively used to just plug the link cable between two and those would work. Well, if you're using analog out, you've taken up your link cable port, and so now how do you get a control to get back into the second Game Boy? Up until this, everyone that I've seen has either used a Game Boy with a bunch of synchronized synthesizers, or they've used two Game Boys and no synthesizers, or they've made a really complex, okay, well I'm going to do MIDI out to this and then MIDI back in to this, and then I'll use MIDI to get to my other synthesizers. And that's just super cumbersome. So LSDJ has this audio in sync, analog audio in sync function that there's just not a whole lot of information written on, and it doesn't seem that anyone's really taken the time to kind of put the two together, which is weird because it's been around, it's a thing. So we're going to talk about how to do that now. The other half of your DMG cable, your link cable, looks just like the other half. So we're going to kind of do this in reverse. You actually, because you've utilized this connection, you really can't easily do anything with it. We're going to try some experiments, so how I did this last time, when I didn't know if this would even work, I actually plugged and you can do this too, this is not how we're going to do it this time because it doesn't make sense for the video, but I actually plugged this into my computer and recorded the sync click onto the computer, and then I played it off of the computer to see what would trigger, which cable would trigger onto the input of the Game Boy, which is one, confusing and probably not the most elegant way of doing this. But we do have to figure out which one of these cables is going to be the sync in. And so we kind of have to reverse what we did to make the audio out cable. Now, I'm fairly certain that it is the orange cable for this. But it was the orange cable last time and something happened, so it might be different, I don't know. But I am completely certain that the blue cable is still going to be your ground and green is your data transfer, which is something you're just going to end up cutting. I think it's data. It doesn't matter. You're not going to need green. You're not going to need. We're still going to test against it because that's what this video is about. If you're unsure of anything, this is how you become sure. So we're going to plug this in with the exposed cables against it. And you know, it dawns on me, now that I'm thinking about it, that these pocket operators do send a sync noise. So, well, if the cable changes, that won't work. I was going to say maybe we can plug something in here and kind of reverse it with the other cable that was made, but that doesn't actually make any sense. What we might be able to do to get that sync noise off is to use our patch cable here. And let's see if I've got... Hold on 1 second. Let's see. Okay, this might work. This is a 1/8 inch jack on this end, 1/4 inch here, and I have this cable that I was testing with over here. This is kind of unnecessary. You really just need it to make any noise to figure out which is the right cable, because you'll hear one step go forward. But we're going to select LSDJ. It's going to load up. Oh, that would be Yoshi's Cookie. I hit the wrong button. for those who don't know, I actually really like Yoshi's Cookie. That's a fun game. All right, LSDJ, and we're gonna start that. Okay, so again, LSDJ boots. We're gonna try and see if I can't work with the contrast so you can actually see what in the world I'm dealing with here. Gosh, let's see. Let me try to do it on the screen, sorry. Maybe that'll help a little bit. We'll go back in a second. But, so here's your LSDJ screen. And we're gonna go up to the menu. In here, we're going to go to sync. There we go, on sync. And we're going to scroll over, and this time we're going to try to find, this is going to be our input, so we're going to stop on analog in, and we're going to set the step to 0C, because we're using pocket operators here. That's it. So if I go back to the song and I hit play, nothing happens. You get the markers, but nothing. There's no audio. Your Game Boy's not broken. It's literally it's waiting to be told, hey, here's a click, go on to the next step. That's what the analog in. It works like the pocket operator. So you're hearing those clicks because these cables are bumping into each other and they're sending some type of static, and that's causing the next step frequency. So let's separate these, and let's determine which of these cables. I'm going to brighten this screen back up for you. Which one of these cables is going to be our connection. And I'm pretty certain it's either red or the orange, so I'm going to set this to a click. Let's see, if I do this, it just puts it on sync 1. I hit play. So this is totally muted and down because I'm just trying to find the sync. Now one of these is going to actually be playing some audio, some type of music, and the other one is going to be playing the click. It should be the white cable if this wire is connected properly. So we're going to hold the ground to the ground, and then we're going to test. You're not going to hear it. Oh, you got to hit play. You got to hit play. It's got to be armed. Let's see. Okay. So red, not orange, not blue, not green. But if I touch red, every time I touch it, it's another step. So that clicks. Let's see if this is actually the click channel. Oh, that's right. Okay, so why isn't it actually stepping through? There's something about the tone on the pocket operator that actually doesn't allow the pocket operators to sync as a device to the Game Boy. This is well documented. So if you make this cable and you think you're going to get your pocket operator to send a signal to your Game Boy, it's either not the right pitch or it's not the right volume, it's not loud enough, something about it isn't correct, so you actually can't get this to trigger over here. But what we can do is make at least enough of a static sound to get it to take one step at a time. So this is just for us to hit any sound whatsoever and say, okay, how do we get this to step forward? And if we hit play and it's waiting for a sound, it's going to get static, and it's going to tell me that the red cable here is the right one to use. Now, when I took this apart, originally it was orange, and what that tells me is that somewhere in this there's some type of a twist, and I got the send as the receive and the receive as the send, and then it gets to the other cable. So I'm having a hard time actually wrapping my head around what is happening inside of the cable, but I do know that when I took apart the cable, the send became the receive and the receive became the send, and that's why the color switched from red to orange. So if I were to flip these the other way and try to make this cable that's already done the receive as opposed to the send, it would turn back to orange. So that's why I suggest this is how you at least find a way to test to know, okay, I know that if this cable is going to be the receive cable, that it's going to be the red cable within it. I just want to double check the ground really quick on the blue. I'm pretty certain that this stays the same. Let's hit play, and we're just going to touch them really quick. Yeah. Yep, okay. So blue is still ground on this. Now we're done with this Game Boy for right now. And we're done with this pocket operator and this janky way of testing. You didn't ask for the professional way to do it, you asked for how I did it, and this is how I got to that conclusion. So now we're going to solder this up. And again, I'm going to go back to my awkward headlamp and make things very strange for everybody. But this is how I see. Okay, so these match the other one, so I know which one's the tip and which one's the shield or the ground. And so it's going to be the exact same as it was last time. Sorry, that's a little bright. So this is going to be your ground. This is going to be this pin over here, if I can get it in focus, is going to be the tip. It's typically whichever one is, you can see is attached to the circle on the inside. If you have to, you can test it with a multimeter. That's what I did the first time, just to make sure, since these were new tips that I'd not used before. But since they all came in the same package, I'm going to make an educated guess that this is going to match the other one. And that should, that's bent a little bit, there we go, bend that back. That should tell me that ground, it's going to be your ground, and this pin's going to be your tip. And so for that, we're going to, again, utilize just the blue and the red cables. And we're going to cut the rest of this off. Now, see, here's the part that is confusing with me about this. This is my little rant. So technically, now I know, technically the LSDJ manual somehow is correct, and I must be thinking about it wrong, because it lists these cables correctly, but it's assuming you're only making a singular input or a singular output cable, and not taking a link cable and making both an input and an output cable. So something is still amiss with how that works, because to my surprise, and I'm sure that this makes sense to someone out there, if you get them reversed, you end up with a different color, because I just went from, when this cable was working last time, it was orange, and now it is red because I got them flipped, which somehow in my head does make sense, but I can't seem to like formulate out loud why. I'm sure someone is going to see this video and try to monetize it, and they'll have to explain it better than I can, and I'm totally fine with that. This is just the initial explainer video. I'm sure someone out there with a YouTube channel will go, hey, this is a content people will want, and they'll go and teach you how to do this better than I will. But this is just how I did it. So again, blue to the ground, and we're gonna fill that up. That looks real good. And let's rotate. I actually like using these guide holes. I know a lot of people don't, but I'm not a lot of people. Alright. Please don't bother me with your critique of my soldering skills. I know they're not great. I'm sure I'm doing things wrong. But if it works for me, great. I'm happy with it. That shouldn't move anywhere. So I should have the receive cable done here. Oh, son of a gun. I always do that once. I didn't do it last time, and I was proud of myself for thinking ahead. And here I am getting ahead of myself. There's no such thing as perfect. Alright. You got to come out. Man, what a great solder job, and for nothing. Alright, I'll be back for you. Alright, so let's try this again the right way. That's right, this one was, I don't know why that end was a little bit further expanded than the other one. It's a little tight. Okay. So, let's put this ground back. And I can't use the guide hole anymore, so just do that. Okay, in theory, that should be just fine, but we will find out soon enough. So, now what? How does this all work together? What's interesting is the sync cable, or the click from the pocket operators, might not be strong enough to trigger the DMG, the Game Boy, but one Game Boy's audio signal is strong enough to trigger another Game Boy's audio signal. That's where this little hub comes into play. So what we're going to do is we're going to test this before I button this down. And it should work. And if it does, you're done. And then it's just settings. And that's where you want to be. So we'll boot. And then I already showed you our settings. So on the send Game Boy, you're going to go up to your project. You're going to turn sync to analog out. And for consistency's sake, because I don't have one of the Korgs, Korg sense, I just always set to C0C on your analog out. Go back down to your show page or your song page. Then on the receiving end, go up to your project page, go to analog in. We're going to also match that with 0C. And come back down. We're going to, just so you can hear the difference, I'm going to go to this drum and hit play. You're not going to hear anything because it's waiting. And I'm going to go to just a synthesizer, so you're not getting, because it's the same song, it'll sound confusing. Now when I hit play here, because it's connected here, these should sync just like if you had a link cable. And they do. That works. Now, you heard a weird little like start there, and that's because of it getting the trigger to play, and I'm just playing it off of noise channel. So what I'm experimenting with this, and I actually the LSDJ Facebook page said that in the most recent update, they had worked on decreasing the amount of latency between that sync, and that's what you're hearing there. So if in theory, if I update the LSDJ software on these, that latency should be lower and that shouldn't happen. But what I typically do when I put together an arrangement between two Game Boys is I always do a countdown track that's kind of allows it to sync up first before they hit, because they do sync based on that click, because that's what it's listening for, because that's its update. So again, you'll hear those are synced up. If I hit stop, it's stopped on noise channel, so it kind of gives you some craziness, but it is synced. Let's go back to the song page, because these are both the same song. This is not a song that I did. This is the Ghost Channel demo. I just really like the music on it, and I was taking it apart to understand some stuff in it. So those are the two same songs, and they synced up pretty well. So this cable officially works. We're going to button this cable up. To do that, I'm going to I like to keep those a little tight because and tightened down. Move the spring up. Now it looks like I have these fancy gold tipped DMG cables. They work a lot better than the black ones, the black cable that I cut off of it, these things, because this part was actually too small and the spring gives a lot more space, but I also think it just looks cool. So, okay, now I've got two things in here. I've got two Game Boys, and we know that they sync, so that's cool. Now, let's take... I'm not going to go through the entire process of how to sync pocket operators. There are a lot of tutorials on that, but I am going to show you that this now officially works. And then you can just sync it as many times as you want. Now, what's interesting is if you want to make a bunch of these receive cables with these audio connectors, and you have a couple of these, you can literally just stack them, daisy chain them all together, and link, in theory, as many of these Game Boys together as you want. You could. This is probably the easiest way to link more than two Game Boys. It's a lot easier than even if you go through the hub hack, which does work. You're limited to still using the LSDJ sync as opposed to, you could put, in theory, I guess if you had enough Game Boys, you could do an entire orchestra out of this thing. Don't expect to see that from me. That's not what I'm about. So we're gonna plug that sync cable in there. We're going to set this up to sync 1. Yeah, sync 1, right? No. Is it sync 2? Maybe it's sync 2. I always forget this. I'm still learning this part. It's waiting, so that's a good sign. My volume, set that volume up to 8 because you got to hear it over these. I'm going to go back into the drums just so we're hearing that. That one's waiting. And now when I play... let's play just the bass line on this. Ready? Let's see if they're synced. It's a little loud. Let me turn that down a little bit. Now what's kind of cool about the pocket operator sync is I can turn that pocket operator sync off and it will still start and be back with the sync. This is not the best rudimentary sound to run on that, but this is now synced with these two Game Boys. I can then daisy chain off of this. If I want to keep these all separate, I can plug another pocket operator into here, and now I've got, you have to pull your audio off of them so you're not getting that decreased daisy chaining sound. But ultimately, that's how you build these sync cables and work around all of the craziness. This is the best way I've found to do it. Feel free to leave a comment or whatever, and A lot of you know how to get a hold of me on Reddit, and if you have a question, this is where I'm at right now. All right, so hopefully that answers your questions.